Chapter 34. The Hamper. For a whole week there were rehearsals every afternoon, sometimes in the mornings too, until Miss Sparks put a stop to them. "I really cannot see, Philip," she said, "why, if you want a pencil, you should not ask Joan to pass it instead of snatching it." Joan understood, of course, but how was Miss Sparks to know that Phil was a leopard at the time, and that what she called snatching was really pouncing? And when Joan, in what seemed the most unladylike manner possible, tried to touch her nose with the tip of her tongue, how was Miss Sparks to be aware that her auburn-haired pupil was a giraffe? At last, it was the very afternoon before. Phil already felt 9, and a bit more, as he put it. The parcels post lady had been up twice on her bicycle, but of course Phil pretended not to know. No decent-minded boy wants to see his presents, or even to guess what they're going to be, until the blissful moment when he knows they are really and truly his, and who sent them. And now, as they all stood under the fir tree, it was a very mild afternoon for November, there came from the foot of the hill the unmistakable sound of a motor. It stopped, as if the driver were asking the way. Then on it came again, up their lane. And presently it stopped once more, at their gate. Mother came hurrying out, but of course Phil knew better than to wait. He walked away past the lilac bushes to the very farthest end of the garden. And if, as he went, he caught a glimpse of a big hamper being handed carefully down, it wasn't his fault, was it? And as he waited, he couldn't help wondering, could he? There must be something special about that hamper. The van stopped quite a long while. Those sort of vans, from places like the stores, were generally in such a hurry. And once he was sure he heard somebody call out something about a drink of water. The other children, too, did not come round for him, even after the van had gone. Not a sound from the garden. They must all have gone into the house. And then an awful thought entered his head. Were they opening the hamper? His hamper? Surely they wouldn't dare. But perhaps the hamper wasn't his at all. It might be just ordinary groceries, only those are generally delivered on Saturdays. Or it might be special things for the party, new kinds of jellies, or cakes, or fruit. Of course, things like that were not the same as presents. There was no reason why you shouldn't know, and if the others were looking at them, well. He had almost made up his mind to sneak in quietly by the kitchen door and see if he could find anything out from Hannah, when he heard Kitty running down the path. "Phil!" she called. "Phil! Where are you hiding? Don't be a leopard, please!" She was wise to beg, for no one knew nowadays what Phil would do. He was constantly stealing unawares in order to pounce suddenly on one or other of his prey from a tree or the top of a shed, or even an open window, and Kitty hated to be pounced on, even when it didn't really hurt. "Righto," he called mildly. "If you'd been a proper dear, you'd have smelt me long ago, especially as the wind's your way. Here I am." "Oh, Phil!" she started, her eyes dancing. "You'd never dream. I mustn't tell you." "Course you mustn't. I didn't ask, did I?" Then very quietly, he really couldn't help it. "It was for me, then?" "Yes," said Kitty. Then, as if afraid to trust herself, she took to her heels and tore back to the house. Even then the others didn't come, and it did seem a little unfair that everybody else should know about the hamper. It wasn't their birthday tomorrow. But what was that? A strange, yelpy sound from the distant house. If only the afternoon would pass, What an awful time till tomorrow. At last he could control himself no longer, and strolled slowly back to the house, as if he didn't care. And as his footsteps sounded on the gravel path, he heard a door hastily slammed and a voice say, "Hush!" Tea was a very slow affair. All the people seemed to have something on their minds, and to be afraid to talk. Perhaps their consciences were pricking. Phil hoped so, and that they hurt, for it was as clear that the hamper, his hamper, had been opened. He wondered how Mother could have allowed it. She was generally such a sport. When tea was over, she said gently, "Phil, I want you to promise." "What, Mother?" "That you won't go into the kitchen this evening. It's out of bounds." "Yes, Mother," he said, with what was almost a whimper. "But I don't think anyone else ought to go either." "They shan't, old boy. Only Hannah and I." "Oh, please, Mother," burst out Joan. "Mayn't I? What about—" "Hush, darling. Phil has promised, and I have promised. Everything will be all right, and I am going to send you all to bed quite early. You will be late tomorrow." Phil was generally the last to go, but tonight he was the first. He was very tired. Also, he was more than a little anxious. He had made known the intended zoo performance in all the houses round about, and lots of people had promised to come, and Auntie, he meant, would take the money. There would be lots and lots for the wounded soldiers, but suppose the animals were not up to form? He was not very sure of some of them. After all, pretending was not as easy as it looked, and getting up a zoo was something of a worry. And what was it in the hamper? And why should it be kept in the kitchen?